Thank you very much, all of you, for joining and welcome. Uh, Last time we had seen one very important metaphor. That was when Arjun and Sri Krishna were going around, were walking along the river bank, and then Krishna tells Arjun, "I can see a spot. I can see a parrot on the branch of a tree." And he says, "Yes. What do you? It's a parrot." And he says, "No, no. I think perhaps it's a pigeon." So he immediately corrects himself and says, "Yes. If you say it's a pigeon, it's a pigeon." And third, again, Krishna says that, "No, no. It appears to be a fowl." He says, "Yes. If you say it's a fowl, it's a fowl." Then Krishna tells him, "Don't you have a mind of your own?" He says, "I have a mind of my own. But what you say is the truth, the reality. Whereas whatever I say may not be the truth." Now, the whole metaphor, this entire episode is a metaphor and deals with reality. What is the reality? Like we had mentioned in the last episode, reality, the modern scientist, reality did not mean much until I think until 1913. Until 1913, the Newtonian physics was were completely dominant, and in reality only meant looking at the whatever your senses could say. So your senses told you that there were trees, there were this sun, moon, stars, and you could feel the people, animals, birds, mountains, rivers. All these things, they form a reality. There's no question of challenging them. However, first in 1905, when Einstein brought out his special theory of relativity, and then in 1915, he brought out his general relativity, theory of relativity, immediately the distinction between matter and energy disappeared. Simultaneously, it happened 2 years earlier in 1913, when Niels Bohr, he proposed his quantum theory, wherein the electron had to be in a particular excited state in a particular what they call in a particular ring, or it was supposed to be going around the neutron in a particular ring, and when if it had to jump, if the energy was a little more, it would jump into the next higher ring or next lower ring. Now this jumping was instantaneous, although it had to move across the space. It was instantaneous. Now this was a crazy idea, but from the theoretical calculations which Niels Bohr had proposed, it showed that there was no time involved in moving from one place to another place. This was the first time that reality was suddenly given a challenge. But only thing is that when these ideas were developed a little more, that when the quantum physics came into being, that really the theory of entire relative, what is the truth or what is the reality, was challenged. Until then, it was very comfortable that whatever you can see through your senses, five senses, that was the reality. But thereafter, reality suddenly took a very uncertain position, and nobody knew what reality was. Nevertheless, all the modern scientists, even today, they are still struggling to understand nature. What is nature? This entire universe, what they see, what is it? They have concluded that yes, even in empty space, there is a lot of energy fields are there. So okay, if it is energy, but what is that is the nature of the reality? But how do you describe it? How do you understand it? Now this is not very clear to the modern scientists. Another thing which they are struggling independently is the concept of consciousness. Now, consciousness is not linked with reality in modern science, and these are two different things. Now, on the other hand, and although they have not yet understood consciousness, but they know that it extends beyond the human being. We are all conscious beings, but how far does our consciousness exist? In fact, when these initial rockets were being launched, and before the man was supposed to a journey was to undertaken to moon. A lot of experiments were done by these American scientists, NASA, on trying to understand what this, how can we communicate from one place to another place through thoughts, because communication becomes very important. And how can we do that? So these are the theories, these are the questions that were being debated upon consciousness, whether the consciousness can reach out to, if it can reach out, to what extent it can reach out. Now, this is not yet finalized, but the consciousness and the reality, they're considered as two different subjects, two different items to be explored independently, and both of them are quite mysterious, as yet unknown. On the other hand, in the eastern, in the east, especially in India, we have had these yogis who have been meditating for long, and through meditation they have tried to go inside and discover what the truth is. Now, when these yogis, they sit for meditation, they not only lose track of the entire surrounding where they are sitting and meditating, but they lose track of their own body. They lose body consciousness. Forget about consciousness about the external world, which certainly they do. They lose track of, they do not have even body consciousness, but they are conscious nevertheless. So this gave them the impression that every human being is conscious about himself. When his eyes are open, when he's not meditating, he's very conscious about himself. There's no denying it. He exists. He can slap himself to this, or he can pinch, or he can feel everything. Very much he's there. But when he goes to meditation, the body which is not there. So what is he? Then this gave them the impression, the yogis. And because we didn't have philosophers like in the West, we had scientists and philosophy was both combined. So we had sages. The sages discovered that reality really should be restricted to consciousness, whereas whatever we see, the Brahman, or whatever we see through our experience through our five senses, these are only relative, and they are not only is it relative, but it is impermanent. It is like fog. From one end it is being created, the other end it is dissipating. So in view of the meditators and Eastern sages, reality is limited only to consciousness. Consciousness is the only real truth, the only reality and the only truth. Whereas the entire universe or the entire Brahman is only relative, and it is not the truth. It is only an illusion. This was one major thing which we discussed last time. I've elaborated a little more, much more in fact. The next thing we discussed was about Subhadra eloping with Arjun. We had seen the Subhadra stands for good culture. Good culture is not only related to human beings in person, which of course it is, how you behave with your subordinates, how you behave with your equals, how you behave with your parents, how you behave with your guests, how do you behave with the general public, your vendors, your suppliers, all those people whom we come across in your day-to-day life, and how you behave with them, that's part of all your culture. In addition, of course, how you celebrate your life. Now, there are four kinds of societies. One is the basic society, where you just live, where, almost like animals, where you look after yourself and you feed, sleep, once a year you procreate, and that's all. You don't have to worry about anything else. So you live in complete harmony with nature. This is the most basic form of society that exists. Over this is what the society becomes human when they start celebrating, when you bring some kind of culture into that society. That culture would be dance, singing, poetry, uh, other creative arts, such as getting together, having literature, art, decorations, tinsels, painting, singing. When these things are introduced, then it is said that this society has got little culture in it. It's a little higher form of society, or the basic one which we had said earlier, animal society. Then there's a third kind of society, or a still higher society, in which all the behavior of the individual is governed by certain principles, certain what they call human principles of uh, human values, human values of truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence. These are five on which they are based. Wherever these are advanced societies. On the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, you have got societies in which not only personal freedom is involved, you don't, there is no celebration. You can, there are arbiters of law who decide how you have to live, how you not to live. These are debased societies. So this is what we discussed last time also. Then we had seen that Subhadra was brought home and by Arjun after she had eloped with him. And when Arjun brought her home, actually he was a little apprehensive about how Draupadi would receive her or how Draupadi would react. That was because till then, and although the brothers had got married a couple of times each, nevertheless in their home, Draupadi was the only lady there, and she did not have to share her husband. Although she had five husbands, she did not have to share her husband with any other woman. The arrival of a new bride there in the form of Subhadra threatened her security, so she was very insecure. But and Arjun, he didn't know how to sort this problem out. So he approached Krishna, and Krishna said, "You don't do anything. You just leave it to Subhadra." Subhadra went and pleaded with her and said, "Please give me conditions, as you know, are such that it was beyond my nothing I could do about it. And as far as you are concerned, you know very well, uh, you won't, you cannot be displaced in Arjun's heart by me or by anybody else. He has very great love and affection for you. I just want a space at your feet so that I can serve you." Her humility was genuine, and humility always conquers ego. So her ego was conquered, and she said, "No, no, Krishna's sister is my sister. You can't live at my face. We live as sisters." So that's how it was conquered. Now, coming back to the story again, in course of time, when Subhadra was with this Draupadi in Indraprastha, she conceived, as was after some time. Now it happened one day while she was still pregnant that Arjun was uh, discussing certain formations of war with Krishna, and Krishna was explaining to Arjun one special formation called Chakravyuha. In this, it was circular formation in which how to get in and get out was a little complex and little difficult. If you first of all you couldn't get in, and if you couldn't get in, you couldn't get out. So this was a special formation which Krishna was explaining to Arjun, and while he was explaining, uh, the fetus which was inside within Subhadra that was listening, and that fetus also uh, imbibed in him or remembered what was the talk that was going on. This fetus later on, when he was born, he was called Abhimanyu. So Abhimanyu, he was born with this knowledge of how to enter the Chakravyuha. It happened that while Krishna was still explaining to Arjun, Subhadra became bored and she fell asleep. So Abhimanyu, who was within her womb, he could not, he did not hear the rest of the thing, how to get out of it. How to get in, he heard, he remembered, but how to get out, he did not hear that. Anyway, chakra here means will or spin. Entering the chakra means getting into a spin or getting confused. Abhimanyu is from Abhiman or vanity. So vanity learned the art of getting confused while in the mother's womb. From the day a person is born, if he is vain, if vanity is there, vanity is always stands for confused person. You will not know what is right and what is wrong. That is the meaning of that little bit of uh, metaphor in his name, Manu's name. Now, while they were in Indraprastha, because of dint of hard work, the Pandavas' power kept on growing, the prosperity kept on growing, and until Krishna once and told Yudhishthir, it's time for you to hold the Rajasuya made the yagya to announce your arrival and to announce your supremacy, your power. So a horse was let free, but he said, before you do that, you'll have to tackle one very important, one very powerful king. His name is Jarasandh. Jarasandh was a very, very powerful king of Magad. And so Krishna has proposed that instead of direct conflict with him, now Arjun and Bhim, they were for war with this fellow. He said, if that is so, let's fight with him, defeat him. But Yudhishthir did not want war. He said, no, 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 war is no good. You keep a lot of people and doesn't serve any purpose. Okay, suppose we win also, we'd have sacrificed so many of our people. So he was against war. Krishna then told Bhim, especially because he was very, enthusiastic. He said, look, what we can do is we can go to Magad and challenge him, Patliputra, and we can go and challenge the Jarasandh and in a personal duel. That way we'll avoid war and that way we'll be able to tackle him also. So with this proposal, three of them, they went to Magad and to Patliputra, where Jarasandh was the king. Jarasandh was a very powerful king. He also had a very powerful army whose general was Shishupal. Shishupal himself was a king. So, but before they could really let their hearts free, Krishna has advised that you go and you have to tackle this Jarasandh. So under Krishna's advice again, three of them, they went to Magad and there Bhim, he challenged Jarasandh to a wrestling duel. The two of them, they kept on fighting Jarasandh. Jarasandh was as a baby, he was born in two halves. Now, there was a demon called Jara. The Jara demon gathered the two halves and with his magical powers, he combined them and gave life to this little baby that time, or an infant. And that infant became alive when the two halves were joined. Not only that, with his magical powers, he decreed that if and when the two halves ever get separated, they'll rejoin again and again. So when the duel started, the wrestling started between Bhim and Jarasandh. Every time they were both equally matched. Jarasandh also very, very powerful. They couldn't do anything until Krishna was watching the match or the fight that was going on wrestling. He took a matchstick and split it into two halves. So immediately he got the hint. Bhim got the hint. He caught hold of that monster Jara and split him up. He caught hold of both legs and just split him up into two halves and then threw them at one place. But with his magical power, as had been detained, as had been given to him, the monster Jara quickly rejoined and became once again a solid whole, complete whole, and again started dwelling with him. This happened a couple of times until Krishna this time took the matchstick and instead of throwing all together at one place, he took one and threw it on this side and threw one half and threw it on that side, this way. Not this way, he threw it this way. So that they both are hurled across each other. When the two halves were thrown this way against each other, then the two halves could not rejoin again, and that monster was killed. With this, they decided to have continue with that what they call yagya. Of course, Jarasandh is also the whole episode is in fact again a metaphor. Everything here is a metaphor. Jara means course, and Sang means union or agreement, And Jaram also means not only coarse, it means old or senile also. So the metaphor here means that everybody, in fact, should be thinking of God, and that should be the paramount thing in your mind. And all those people who are not thinking about God, they are in fact old and senile. And this is what Jarasandh stands for. The Jarasandh is also part of, all these characters are within us, you know. So when we become old and senile and we don't bother uh, about God, then that is the Jarasandh within us. And this Jarasandh has to be destroyed. Jarasandh means company of the old and senile. Now you have to get out of this company of the old and senile. And this company is very important. Why is it very important? Because man is a social character, and whatever the impression he gains from his surroundings, that is the impression that he carries with him, and that is how he's made of. He quickly falls in line or conforms to the peer pressure, peer group, the behavior of the peer group. So if his company is with the saints and sages, he'll start behaving like saints and sages. If on the other hand his company is with wicked people or selfish people, then he'll start behaving in that way. That is what is the meaning of Jarasandh. Jarasandh means company of the old and senile. Now, this such as company has to be, in every individual who try to break this company, get out of this company. But the company will not leave you. It will come and approach you, try to entice you. And if there are, let us say, people who drink, then through drinks or through whatever else, the company will again rejoin you, and you will not be able to get yourself free until what is meant by throwing across each other this way was that you not only move away from the company, but take up some other alternative company, join an alternative company, so that the old company will not be able to join you, and you will not be part of that old company again, and that is how you can break this company of the old and senile. Now, once this Jarasandh was killed, then they led their horse in this Rajsayu Mega Yagna, and that horse sacrifice was to be done after the horse was led free. The horse roamed all over, and everybody accepted their overlordship. There was one king called Bhagadatta. Bhagadatta was also very quickly uh, brought to life by Arjun. Again, Bhagadatta means one who gives your destiny. See, everything is within ourselves, and all these gods and whatever names we are taking is also all within us. So the giver of our destiny also within us, and Arjun and Bhim, they together with the yearning for God and their flawlessness, these two very quickly brought that Bhagadatta also within their control. And after that, the yag was performed. But before that yag was performed, they said that people will be coming, and where are we going to put them? Because a great festival will be held. So then Arjun thought over that demon Maya, and he sent for the demon Maya and told him that you have to build a house or a palace, a huge, beautiful palace where all the guests can be accommodated. And Krishna added that not only should it be beautiful, it should be such that it will be impossible even from detailed scrutiny from within to be able to, for anybody to figure out what this is all about and how could this have been constructed. So this was very important, even from deep, detailed examination from within. Nobody should be able to identify or understand how this has been built, etc. Maya was up to the task, and he built them a fabulous uh, palace with corals and brought from faraway land, lots of precious jewels, lots of you know creatures insects, and others, which he brought from other worlds. And the whole place looks surreal. He seems to be nested among the clouds. It fishes, where goldfishes were there in a little pond outside and inside the palace. And the entire lighting was through not through lamps, etc., or not through flames or candles, but it was through brilliantly glowing worms. We had got glowworms, some creatures like that, and there were so many of them that no shadows were cast. The whole palace was brightly lit there. There were lots of fountains there, a lot of birds perched on trees outside the palace, singing. And in fact, so the whole palace looked really exceedingly beautiful. Now, this palace which Maya constructed and is the entire world, the Brahman which we live in, or the universe, or the world that we live in. It also refers to the human body. Both these things, the human body as well as the entire world, when we are looking from inside, it is very difficult to understand and because of its complexity. As we had mentioned during a little while ago, that the scientists are still trying to understand what is the nature of the universe. Of course, they have come to the conclusion, or not conclusion. They have found that not only they can break down to atoms, but you can go even further, and subatomic particles are there, and eventually everything gets converted into energy. But they're still not very sure how it is. The same thing happened in case of this palace also. It is very difficult to make out what this is all about. Now, peace is real wealth, and happiness is real wealth. But man is so obsessed with uh, with the money that he gets, or obsessed with he collects certain stones, red color stone, green color stone, white color stone, transparent stones, and he calls them jewels, and he considers them wealth. But this is not real wealth, because this wealth you cannot take with you. The gold, silver, and all these so-called jewels, they are of useless to man because you cannot take it with you. They don't really belong to you, and it will be left, and it doesn't give you any benefit during your lifetime. During your lifetime, what it does give you benefit is your peace, and happiness is what you desire, and that you can get when you follow the other five uh, human values. Now, the most important of these values is love. If you give love, love is something that it does not diminish when you share with others. On the other hand, the more you share, the more it grows. So that is what this palace was all about. But to those who did not live in there, the Maya, the constructor of this palace, the one who constructed this palace, had said that while those who are living within the palace, for them this will be fine, but those who are not live within in the palace, they'll find it difficult. Now, Maya, as you know, was the chief architect of the Asur, the demon. Now, Maya also, what is this? This again is a metaphor. Maya refers to the illusionary property, the property of the Brahman, or the consciousness, whereby the consciousness appears as infinite forms in infinite forms, the entire world that you see there, that you see across without senses. And this world does not really exist there, as the meditators at the sages had discovered that when they go into meditation, the entire world disappears. Nothing is there. All that they are there is themselves. So that was very clear that the human being was himself the consciousness, and he was the truth. Whereas the entire world, what is sees there, the entire universe is only an illusion and does not exist. It's only a creation of the mind. So Maya is that faculty of the of the Brahman, or the truth, or consciousness, or Purush, or Parmeshwar, various names, known by various names. So it is that property of this ultimate being, super being, whereby even though there's nothing or there's only one, It appears as many in infinite form, in infinite shapes, in infinite colors, and infinite number of properties. Everyone, each one of them is different from the other, and each of them exceedingly pretty and useful. Now, when this palace was constructed, before the yagya was Raj Rajsuya made the yagya was to be conducted. Yudhishthir went around the palace examining the whole thing, and he was very thrilled with it. He said, "Yes, it's exceedingly good," and he kept on giving compliment after compliment to Yudhishthir, and said that to the architect Maya, and Maya, that architect Maya, felt very happy and told Yudhishthir, "I'm glad you like this, but I may tell you that those people who live here, for them it is okay, but those who come from outside, for them it will not be as comfortable because there a lot of deception was involved there. It was a magical palace, and when the yagya was to be performed, naturally Yudhishthir invited all the kings who had now become his vassals to come over and take part in the celebrations. Duryodhan from Hastinapur was also invited, and he came over. But of course, he was not his vassal. But nevertheless, he came over out of curiosity. He wanted to see, and a little bit of envy. He wanted to see how come they built such a beautiful place, not just a palace, but the entire country from Khandapras that converted into Indraprastha. Indraprastha was the Indraprastha is again a metaphor. It means Pras means to proceed towards. Indra means to Lord of the heaven. So it means that from Khandapras, which means from ruins, you become the Lord of the heavens. That's why you move there with your how, with your effort, like they say, parishram and sanghar, through your hard effort and through the company of God. So with these two, these people, the Pandavas, they managed to build up an entire uh, country, which competed with Hastinapur. Hastinapur, as you know, was several thousand years old at that time, and but nevertheless, Yudhishthir, Maya had built up a palace, and the Pandavas on their own had also made the country very prosperous. Excuse me. When Duryodhan was called there, he was absolutely fascinated as he kept on examining one item after the other. Each palace, each walls, each thing appeared so not surreal, but he had never seen anything like this. He was absolutely fascinated and he was very jealous, in fact, envious. And he wanted something like this. So he kept on noting everything in great detail. And he wanted his architect to be able to build. If you recall, he also had good architect in the form of Purochan, but that Purochan was killed when he built that house of Laksh, from which the Pandavas escaped after being set fire to that house. Anyway, so certainly Duryodhana also had some architects, and he wanted to tell them that how to, what kind of palace he wants. But while he was here, uh, everything looked so illusionary and so deceptive. So at one place, he thought there's water, and he kept away from it. But it was a very absolutely crystal clear flow. So then, since others walked, he also walked over it and said, he said, "Yes, I've been deceived. But this is very good. It's not water. It's crystal." And at another place, it was all water, but he again mistook that place for crystal, and he walked over it. The moment he walked, he went plump into that little sump, into the little pond which was there, or a tank. And Bhim, he laughed loudly. Also, there was a maid who was next to the Draupadi. She inquired, "Is he not son of the blind king?" Duryodhan, who had become wet after falling into this pond or little pool of water, was very upset and angry. He only heard this Bhim's laughter, And the remark made by this maid, Draupadi's maid, who was standing next to her, asking Draupadi, is he not the son of the blind king? These two things only he heard or struck him, and he swore that he is going to take revenge against these two people. He was naturally quite distraught, quite upset, and he was all wet. So Yudhishthir, of course, stepped out and asked him to change and got him some fresh pair of clothes to change. And somehow he managed to restore his, finish his embarrassment. But he was very, very upset from within. And he said, at an opportune time, I will have to take revenge against uh, Bhim and Draupadi for making fun of me. Now, the human body, where the self resides, is the world where the human being resides. It is a palace where not only this is a palace where really ourself resides. There ourselves means the humanity. If you recall, there's a Purush around every form. There's a tiny bit of Purush in the heart, and around that heart or the tiny Purush, the Prakriti builds a form. So the human body is that really, the palace that is built by Maya, in which you've got a tiny uh, consciousness, a bit of consciousness, Purush, and the rest is all Prakriti. Now, this is the palace that was built by illusion. It appears illusionary because it is illusionary, as we had mentioned earlier also, that when you go into meditation, you find that the body which is there, it disappears. So it's only an illusion. The moment you get out of that meditation, you see, get back into uh, the artificial reality or the world, which you sense throughout senses. This is the palace that was built uh, by Maya. Man really wants only happiness, but happiness is not forthcoming from money or from jewels. But nevertheless, man keeps on collecting jewels all throughout his life, and he calls these uh, wealth, where the real wealth is happiness, and uh, is is happiness. It is Duryodhan was nearly was very upset because of his ego. Duryodhan had a very large ego, and he wanted to compete with everybody. So that's why he had gone to this place, rather come to this place in the first instance, because he wanted to see for himself firsthand what is the palace, how they built up their whole country, which is now, it competes with Hastinapur. Hastinapur, as you know, was several thousand years old with the most powerful king ruling there. And over the 1,000 years, they had built up the whole country, which was very prosperous, and the people were very happy, and they're all well-to-do, and everything was good about Hastinapur. But here was Indraprastha, which rivaled Hastinapur, and in fact, in several cases, appeared better. The palace of the palace built by Maya was certainly among the best. Okay. After this, the Yudhishthir decided that he'll conduct the uh, yagya. I think we'll stop here and throw open the